What's up, y'all? Boogie Knight here, and welcome back to the Dark Souls Lorethrough. You got a lot to accomplish between now and our next bonfire, and a little bit of distance as far as the crow flies. No pun intended. Anyways, for those of y'all that are just joining us, we escaped the undead Northern Asylum. We're here at Firelink Shrine, which for all intents and purposes is our hub world, much like the Nexus in Demon's Souls, Majula in Dark Souls 2, and of course the rebirth of Firelink Shrine in Dark Souls 3. Now, before we go over here and chat with our first character, the Crestfallen Warrior, there are a couple of things I do want to touch upon. I recently discovered that something that I kind of thought about for a long time, but apparently came into fruition in my cranium recently, and that was Miyazaki. That is the president of FromSoft, as well as the lead developer of the Dark Souls franchise, mentioned on a podcast or some interview that he was a massive fan of Team Ico. Now, Ico was the company that did the titular game Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and most recently The Last Guardian. And I think that's really fascinating because those games, or at least when I played Shadow of the Colossus, there was an air of ambiguity to the ruins, the older than time structures, the ambiguity to the overall story. So you can kind of see how they had an influence on Miyazaki. So it just kind of says something in the back of my mind. I mean, I've always made comparisons to H.P. Lovecraft, but this takes it in a different direction. So for those that played Shadow of the Colossus or any of the Team Ico games, take a look at the Firelink Shrine structure, as well as the tall grass, as well as this aqueduct leading into this walled structure, which will be Undeadburg, in an area that we will get into this entry. So before we go any further and explore Firelink Shrine, let's go over here and talk to the Crestfallen Warrior. He's got a lot to talk about, so here we go.
Well, what do we have here? You must be a new arrival. Let me guess, fate of the undead, right? Well, you're not the first. But there's no salvation here. You'd have done better to rot in the undead asylum. But too late now. Well, since you're here, let me help you out. There are, actually, two bells of awakening. One's up above in the undead church. The other is far, far below, in the ruins at the base of Blight Town. Ring them both, and something happens. Brilliant, right? Not much to go on, but I have a feeling that won't stop you. So, off you go. It is why you came, isn't it? To this accursed land of the undead?
So we're going to talk a little bit more to him, but first of all, he had a lot to say in that opening monologue. First of all, he made it clear that we are not the first undead to leave the Northern Undead Asylum and venture to Lorethrough. So however long that this Crestfallen Warrior has been here, he's seen quite a bit. So the fact he alluded to that he talked about how there were two bells of awakening rather than the one bell of awakening that Oscar of Astora had mentioned in the previous entry. So I find that contradiction between Oscar's family saying and the Crestfallen Warriors. So it's almost clear to me that maybe Oscar's family had never really come this close, and the pilgrimage thing that he discussed in the beginning is just that. It is just a legend. It is just a family saying, and the Crestfallen Warrior is there to correct us on that, as well as give us a bit of guidance. So let's hear what else he has to say.
Ah, your face. You're practically hollow. But who knows? Going hollow could solve quite a bit.
Y'all will have to get used to the maniacal cackle. A lot of characters do that as kind of almost an ellipsis in this game, and a lot of the Souls games. Something else I do want to bring up also is this entry and the next couple of entries, there will be some references to Dark Souls 3. Now, of course, this game came out a long time before DS3 came out, but since Dark Souls 3 kind of has an amalgamation of things, I do want to touch upon various things as I did in the first entry.
What? Restoring your humanity? Well, there are a few ways to go about it. Collect it bit by bit from corpses. Or you can butter up a cleric and get yourself summoned. And the quickest way, although I'd never do it, is to kill a healthy undead. and pillage its humanity. Coveting thy neighbor is only human, after all.
Yeah, he clearly has a lot to, I would say to live for, but he is undead like us. And that brings up another interesting point, is that there are only undead that travel to Lorethrough to accomplish things. Why is that? Well, I'm about to contradict myself because we're going to meet a human character in a few minutes, but still something to think about, that it's only undead that primarily venture to Lorethrough like it's some sort of calling.
What are you looking at? Don't try anything clever. You might regret it.
Anything else you want to say to us?
What?
Of course.
You want to hear more? Oh, that's all we need. Another inquisitive soul. Well, listen carefully then. One of the bells is up above in the undead church, but the lift is broken. You'll have to climb the stairs up the ruins and access the undead burg through the waterway. The other bell is back down below the undead burg, within the plague-infested Blight Town. But I'd die again before I step foot in that cesspool.
That's another interesting piece of information he let us go on. First of all, once again, telling us how to get into the Undead Burg, as well as having kind of a fast travel, because until we obtain a certain piece of inventory, we will not be able to fast travel like between bonfires like in later Dark Souls games. And he also said he would die again before he ventured into Blight Town, which will be further down the pike in a few entries. So I think it's interesting that he still has his humanity, even though he fully admits to being undead like me, yet he looks like a normal human being. He hasn't gone hollow. So one questions how he, despite saying he would rather not pillage humanity from other undead, how he still maintains that form.
Bloody hell, what is it now? You ask too many questions.
Well, you did say I was another inquisitive soul. We're going to look around here a little bit before you finish up exploring Firelink Shrine, but I do want to go down here for a second and meet another character, and that is Anastasia of Astora, another Astora person. I think her name is Anastasia, or Anastasia, something like that. She is a bonfire keeper, which there are various bonfire keepers scattered around Lorethrough, and they have the ability to reinforce Estus flasks. What we need to do, unlike in Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, where we actually find Estus fragments, we have to find bonfire keepers' souls. And from that, that's how we reinforce Estus. Now, one thing I do want to get across to y'all is that if a bonfire keeper dies, for example, our Astora Maiden or some of the other bonfire keepers throughout the course of the game, the bonfire itself will die. And you will not be able to rest there, save there, and anything like that will be backpedaling. Now, the reason I'm going down here is for A, to admire the view in a second, but B, since we have the Master Key, since Blighttown has such a bad reputation, if we truly wanted, there we go, we could take this elevator here down to the base and then use the Master Key to backdoor through Blighttown and go to the base and enter to the second area for the second Bell of Awakening. Or the first if we so choose. We have that option available. This is free roam and free travel, particularly since we have the Master Key. But the second thing I want to focus on is look at, this goes back to my earlier comments about Miyazaki and Team Eco. Look at Lorethrough. Almost as far as the eye can see, the other villages. Now, are these parts of Undeadburg or the other areas that we don't get to visit? What exactly is down there? And why was Lorethrough buried as such? You can kind of see some more of the watchtowers down here, some other parts of the lower Undeadburg, which we will get into later on, all the way down the cliffside. So Miyazaki's attention to detail is second to none. And honestly, I have not seen a level of detail for graphics in any other game except the Soulsborne games. That includes Bloodborne, even though I haven't played too much of it. Now, we are going to level up with the bonfire in just 1 second, but I do want to pillage this corpse because we have 3 humanity. And now we can look at the description of the display. A rare tiny black sprite found on corpses, used to gain 1 humanity and restore a large amount of HP. This black sprite is called humanity, but little is known about its true nature. If the soul is the source of life, then what distinguishes the humanity we hold within ourselves? So when we level up in this, unlike just crunching it like in future Dark Souls games, we have to crunch humanity, then come over to a bonfire, and then reverse hollowing. So it is a multi-step process to remove our hollowing, and from there, we can summon NPCs or other characters that we play in online mode, and we, of course, can invade other worlds, which I'll talk about momentarily. But first, we do want to level up as Raven Renegade. So let me talk briefly upon each of these categories. We have Vitality, which controls primarily our HP and a little bit of our physical defense. Our Attunement, which is more spell, or in this case, miracle related. And attunement slots will give us the opportunity to find spells, pyromancies later on if we decide to go that route. Endurance is for our stamina upkeep as well as our equipment load. Now, equipment load means we can carry a certain percentage and still maintain moving around, rolling, dodging. If you increase your equipment too much, I forget what the percentage is, I think it's 50%, so in which case right now we're at 52. If we go above 26%, we will be slow rolling, also known as fat rolling. Strength, of course, is damage as well as dexterity. Of course, physical defense is across the board. Resistance, of course, poison resistance all we can. The sooner that'll up to other things such as cure, bleed, poise, dark. Intelligence is more based upon our defense as well as spells, and then of course humanity. So faith, of course, once again, more towards miracles and spell work. Since we are going with a tank build, I do want to focus primarily on OP builds. That is strength and dex, and we should probably do vitality and endurance down the pipe, but we're still early enough in game. Let's go ahead and start with that. Now, of course, if we die, we will lose all of our souls that we have with us, but we do have a chance of getting them back by going back to where we died, and then from which, otherwise known as our bloodstain, and gathering the souls. But if we die again before we get back to our bloodstain or obtain our souls, we lose them completely. So just a little... Hey, we have something here. We have fire bombs. These are so good. So let's take a quick look at our fire bombs. It's a bisque urn filled with black powder explodes inflicted fire damage. It's a relatively powerful ranged weapon, especially in situations calling for fire damage. A very precious item at low levels. Many warriors use these to augment their strategic repertoire. We are actually going to remove our... Let's go ahead and unequip that, and put that there. There we go. So now that we have that, if we just hit the down arrow, we can go between our humanity and our Estus. We're going to keep the Estus, but it's nice to have that offhand, and you kind of want to have a power loadout, in my opinion. We're still normal rolling. I think our statistics are... We're 21 out of 52, so we're still below. We're still normal rolling. If we drop a little bit lower on our poise, we'll come to this area in a second. We'll be fast rolling. This area is crucial for later on after we ring the 2 bells of awakening. But something I want to touch upon over here. Now, this was actually originally going to be in the original format of the game, this statue of Firelink Shrine, this particular goddess, but it was cut from the original, or it might just be in the Japanese version, I am not sure. But this was supposed to play a titular role in the game later on, as well as one of the NPCs we encountered down the pike. I'm not sure which goddess that is. It could be Velka, the goddess of sin, or it could be Lloyd, the Alphon. But here's something I do want to bring up with y'all, is in the course of this game, there aren't often mentions about the gods. We talk about Velka several times. We talk about Lloyd, particularly in Lloyd's Talisman, which we'll acquire in this entry. We don't hear too many other things of the gods, and there's another crow. That's the one that brought us from the Undead Shrine, and we can eventually use that crow to go back to the Undead Asylum. So that's something to consider down the pike, because we will be returning to that for a key piece of evidence to further the quests. Souls of the Lost Undead. Now, these are things we can crunch in mass and get numerous amounts of souls. So, souls are the source of life, same things we talked about last time, but different souls, depending on the size, like souls of lost and dead are the minimal, I think, that we crunch to get maybe 100 souls. And then large souls of undead, souls of heroes will garner more souls. We'll crunch a soul of the lost undead when we get back to the bonfire. Now, this area over here, we're going to kind of skirt right now because it's infested with skeletons, and these skeletons can kill us and otherwise make our lives living hell. But we're going to go down that way in a second because we're going to retrieve some items I want to examine. But before we do that, we have another NPC that we need to talk to. And his name is Petrus of Thorland. And Thorland, kind of like Astora, is another area we will land outside of Lorethrough and we're going to talk about and see what's going on. So here's Petrus. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hello there. I believe we are not acquainted. I am Petrus of Thorland. Have you business with us? If not, I'd prefer to keep a distance, if possible.
So here's something I want you all to think about really quickly, is different lands kind of have different associations with them. In this case, Thorland is often associated with mages and clerics, clerics, excuse me. And Petrus is one of those clerics. So kind of a combination between a mage and a warrior. You'll also hear about Vinheim, which is famous for the Dragon School, which is more about miracles. And then the Great Swamp, which is also famous for pyromancy. So this is just something I'm trying to establish as a baseline when we encounter these other characters from other lands.
Hello there. I realize that I have requested that we retain our distance. But I also want you to know that it is not meant in ill will. Here, take this as a token of peace. No, go ahead. It's for you.
So he gave us a copper coin, as well as saying that he was not meant to...
Oh my.
Okay.
You again. Oh, I know. How about this? I have to await my companions here anyway. So what if I were to teach you some miracles? Would that please you?
It would, actually. We're not going to be going down the path of miracles, but I want to show what would happen if we say yes, because this is something that's going to lead to something called a covenant, which covenants run wild throughout the course of this game, as well as the Soul series to begin with. We're going to look at the copper coin in a minute because there is something I really, really want to touch upon.
Very well. Then first, a covenant with the gods.
So here we go. We can join a covenant, which is, this one's called the Way of the White. Now, you can only be at one covenant at a time, so if we decide later on to join a different covenant, we will have to leave this one behind. But we can join back and forth. There's just different penalties as well as ups and downs and that kind of thing for any covenant. But we're going to be doing this mainly not as a PvP, so I just want to show you different things. So yes. How do I get rid of this copper coin? There we go. So we're a part of the Way of the White.
Now let me share my miracles. Only their ultimate effectiveness will be determined by your efforts and your faith.
So we don't have a high faith, so he's not going to talk to us very much. But later on, if we decide to up our faith, he will give us more information about his companions. But I do want to learn the gesture for starters. We learned the shrug. Now, this is a way to kind of add a bit of whimsy to the game. We can use actions and gestures like I did when I first started this entry as the bow. I'll show this to you in a second. But let's see if Petrus has anything else to say to us.
My companions are Milady and her young knights. She is young, but burdened by an undead mission. We are her defenses, to keep her from harm.
Is there anything else you want to say to us?
An undead mission? Regrettably, I cannot share that with you. But you are my pupil. Perhaps if you show your faith.
So for 700 souls, he'll tell us more information. So let's go ahead and crunch some souls.
I'm afraid that may be difficult, for our missions are sacred.
Let's go ahead and crunch some
Come again.
souls.
The effective...
Because it's still early enough, we can do this. So let's go ahead and crunch this. Might not be enough.
I will...
Hang on.
Come again. The effect...
Yes, yes, yes. Do we have any other souls we can crunch right now? Copper coin, we're going to look at that in a second. Okay, so we don't have any other souls, but it's basically, for every level you are, it's going to cost you 100 souls. So we're going to go ahead and crunch some souls, and we'll come back here before we level up so we can hear that. But let's look ahead right now at the copper coin, because this is an interesting piece of information that will tie into Petrus's exposition with us. It shows Old Man McLoif, the god of medicine and drink. Even coins of great value in the world of men have little value here in Lorethrough, where the accepted currency is souls. Those who dream of returning to the outside world are fond of carrying these around. So, he talks about being on an undead mission, or a defense with his lady as an undead mission, yet he gives us a copper coin. So, it's heavily implied that Petrus is indeed human and protecting his lady while she's in an undead mission. So did he give us the coin because he doesn't think he's going to be returning to Thorland? It was an actual gesture of us? What was the reason? And things are meant to get a little more sinister as we go up this staircase here. And I'll explain why. Now, if you go up here around the corner, you're going to come to this elevator shaft. We're going to go there in just 1 second. I want to see if there's anything up here. We have something else. Soul of the Lost Undead. I don't think that's going to give us the 700 we need, but let's go ahead and crunch it. Okay, so we just need to kill one more enemy, and then we can get the 700 souls. So we are going to be able to do that this entry tonight. So we dive down here in this elevator shaft. Eventually, once we get the lift working from the Undead Church, we will have the ability to travel between Firelink and here without having to go all the way back through the Berg and so on and so forth. But this little area, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 chests. Each one has something in it. Now, of course, longtime players of the Souls games know that there's a chance for chests to become mimics, and further down the pike, I'll show you what difference between a regular chest and a mimic. But a good old thing to do is just go ahead and give it a slash. If it doesn't open up and decide to swallow you whole, well, then you know it's safe. So in here we have 4 cracked red-eye orbs, which is how, if we decide to, we can use to invade other worlds. So online play item, we're hollow, we can't do that. The cracked red-eye orb allows players to temporarily imitate this ability normally limited to the Dark Wraith of Koth. Koth is another titular character we will be talking about and with down the course of this game. Now you want to be careful, if you smash the chests too many times, it will just turn into rubbish. But we have a Morning Star and a Talisman. Both things are used primarily by clerics, mainly Petrus, since he is the only one we've run into. There we go. Morning Star. Here we go. A hammer with a sharp spike on its pommel, one of the more barbaric cleric weapons, which I think Petrus has. Uniquely, this hammer inflicts thrust damage and causes bleeding. And this is for casting Miracles of the Gods. Pretty much the gods aren't really talked about beyond these little things. The big thing, well, I'll get to that in a moment. Equip talismans to cast miracles and attune miracles from a scroll at a bonfire. Most miracles are of a limited number of uses. So, we know of McLoif. Velka, the goddess of sin. I've talked about her a little bit, which we'll learn more about. And Lloyd we'll talk about in just a moment. But why is it that the gods are no longer talked about? Why is the only thing we ever talk about are the 4 lords? That is, our Gwyn, Izalith, the Furtive Pygmy, and Seath the Scaleless. Were these gods in themselves, in their own right? Or were the gods abandoned during the Age of Ancients when the dragons ran loose before Gwyn and everybody conquered them? If y'all have any insight, please let me know in the comments below. Now here we go. Homeward Bones. These are key because they will let you teleport back to the last bonfire you stayed at. Bonfires are fueled by the bones of the undead. In rare cases, the strong urge of their previous owners to seek bonfires enchants their bones with a homeward instinct. So every bonfire you see in Lordran in this one, Drangleic in Dark Souls 2, and Lothric in Dark Souls 3 are all made out of the bones of the undead. So are these undead that fully went hollow and just never came back to life? What separates a undead branded by the dark sign and just a regular undead? Are they all in the same, or are they different? Now, this last thing, Lloyd's Talisman, this is what offers an air of sinister nature to possibly Petrus. Lloyd's Talismans. So, a talisman utilized by Allfather Lloyd's cleric knights to hunt down the undead. Blocks Estus recovery within a limited area. In the outside world, the undead are accursed creatures, and Lloyd's cleric knights are widely praised for their undead hunts. Now remember, Petrus said his lady's on an undead mission. Does that mean she's undead as well? Or is she human and trying to accomplish something and is just trying to be protected by Petrus and somebody else? Now, we're going to go ahead and drop down this cliffside and run back up because, well, the skeletons come about, and they are vicious. What I'm trying to do is run back to the bonfire and sit at it, because then the skeleton will de-aggro. That's another thing bonfires do, is it will immediately reset the enemy AI. So, we are going to go up here quickly, and we're going to kill an undead, and we're going to go back to Petrus. And we're going to use the 700 souls to find out more about his fair lady. I need to work on my backstab. There we go. Can we kite you out too? Hey. There we go. Cracked round shield. We'll look at that in a moment, but first let's go ahead and run back to Petrus. We're not going to stay at the bonfire because it is going to spawn the enemies, but I want to see what he has to say, because I don't even know what he says.
Oh, miracle.
Yes.
I'm afraid that...
Okay. So because we did not have the souls, he is going to not tell us.
I'm afraid that...
Now, if we decide we want to do some
again.
miracles, then maybe he will allow us to hear what he has to say. But what I might do is see if I can dig up his dialogue, and then next entry I'll talk about what Petrus had to say for the souls, because I'm sure I could find it on some of the wikis. Now, up here we got a couple of guys, so we have an ambush up here. Now, this is the aqueduct that the Crestfallen Warrior said that goes into the Undead Burg over here, which is the gigantic walled area that I will talk about in more detail when we get in there. Maybe he'll blow himself up. Wouldn't that be grand? He's doing something. Okay, I don't think... Well, I wasn't intending for that to happen, but that's okay. Well, that's good, because that completely ruined the ambush that I was going to try and do. Hollow Warrior Waistcloth. We'll look at this armor in a moment. We still have one more guy up yonder stairs. Nope, don't fall off the cliff. That'll be great, thank you. Of course, though, we lose whatever item was on his body. It was probably some more armor that we probably won't use, much like the cracked round shield. But let's go ahead and take this this mook out. That'd be great. Come here, boy. I need to work on my parries as well. But there's a few things I need to work on mechanic-wise, and I might do some soul farming and stuff off camera to kind of work on my mechanics down the pike. Another Soul of the Lost Undead, that's great. But this pretty much wraps up everything at Firelink Shrine. And I've been talking for like 30 minutes, so this is a perfect opportunity for us to move on, to bid farewell to the Crow, and move on to the Undead Burg. And there's a little bit of the Undead Burg we're going to explore tonight, but for the most part, we are going to get to the bonfire and call it a session. We are going to come over here to the underside of this aqueduct later on down the pike, because there are some people we can talk to as well as some glowing things that we can pillage. But we are not ready for that just yet. So let's come over here. Let's grab the Soul of the Lost Undead. I find it fascinating that the lift has been broken, but nobody has decided to fix it. Is this just because something to keep purposely vague, or was this intended? And I'll talk about that rat in a second. Another Soul of the Lost Undead. These rats actually feast on souls, so that's why it had its back to us when it was feasting on this thing. Anyway, so, was this just a mechanic to avoid fast traveling from the undead parish up above towards the church? Or was it purposely broken by Petrus, or we're gonna get a key for that down the pike, or the crestfallen warrior to force the undead into a bottleneck? Just notice it almost looks like there's a skull on the back of his armor next to the pauldrons, to limit who gets into the Undead Burg as kind of a rite of passage. Much like the Asylum Demon was considered kind of a rite of passage for questing undead. Now we're at our first major area, and that is the Undead Burg. This is a really good way for people to learn mechanics, learn things like that, and everything such as that. So here's what I want to talk about first with Undead Burg, is this is a gigantic walled-off portion of Lorethrough, surrounded by walls, watchtowers, and everything. And I want to look at this in a second, but first I want to get rid of some of these dudes, so I can explore freely and go into detail freely, without having to constantly look over my shoulder. So here's the thing, if all undead branded with the dark side, or maybe all undead in general, were led to the Northern Undead Asylum, or maybe it was the only asylum. It's never fully explained in detail, except maybe the Crestfallen Warrior alluded a little bit that there's only one. Was the Undead Burg originally a thriving part of Lorethrough that eventually turned into ruin and became kind of an undead haven? Or was this used as almost an internment camp for undead to kind of eke out their days before they get taken up to the asylum? Large Soul of a Lost Undead. Good. We have an ambush. Look at that. We have two guys over there sneaking around. Some red hollow. I'm curious as to what the color symbol is, because we've seen red hollow, we've seen, you know, my blue face hollow, and we have hollows of different shapes, sizes, and colors. So is there one hollow that symbolizes anything else? Okay, that was just dumb. There we go. We're near a bonfire, so I have no qualms estusing up. We have 9, but you want to be a little bit conservative with some of your Estus. There we go. Until you at least learn the lay of the land of things. I mean, once again, I am not Northern Lion, I am not Epic Name Bro, I am not Vati Vidya, I'm not Orin, I am not one of the experts of the Soul series, I'm definitely not Harkov. But then again, I'm not trying to show what it takes to be a master of anything. I merely want to express my... You okay, buddy? I merely want to express my own hypotheses and thoughts on various parts of the lore. Once again, that's everything this is all about. Mechanics, I'm just trying to do a bare minimum of... Okay. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. There you go. Broken straight sword. That's what we had back in the because we're double tapping. Back in the undead asylum was the broken straight sword before we got anything. Rubbish. This is basically what happens if you smack around a chest too long. Anyways, so what was the significance of the undead burg? Did it have a different name? We'll go there eventually. Did it have a different name, and it was long since forgotten and just known as the undead burg after the first flame started to die off? Or humanity? And something else I want to postulate that I'll keep coming back to is, why did Gwyn fear the first flames fading? Was it a fear of the dark? Was there something more sinister afoot? Was the darkness a symbolization? Was it xenophobia? Since the Vertipigny found the Dark Soul, which in turn led to the rise of humanity, what was that? Was Gwyn scared of the rise of humanity and wanted to keep the godhood alive? There's always a few hypotheses surrounding that, so what your thoughts are on the fire fading, the undead rising? What is that all about? So over here, we can jump that eventually, and we can actually probably also go back to that eventually, but probably not in this entry. I want to say hello to the Drake. How are you? We're going to encounter that Drake probably in the next entry. Yeah, definitely the next entry, because we've been playing for about 45 minutes now. We've got a couple of dudes here. Gonna kite this guy out, take out the archer, and then we're gonna meet another character. Specifically the undead merchant. Oh. Okay, well I wasn't gonna go for... I guess we managed to get a riposte in. I'm not complaining. Let's go ahead and just run. Now, in hindsight, the undead burg reminds me a little bit of the High Wall of Lothric in Dark Souls 3. Now, once again, I did say I was going to be tying some stuff between Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 based upon my own observations. So, of course, spoilers are coming, much like winter is coming. So down over here across this battle, we got two shielded dudes. So I'm going to see if I can kite one guy out at a time. Because taking both of these guys out will probably cause my death. Get that out of the way. Get him into open area. And then we can see about... They have pretty fast movement speeds. So trying to get a backstab, and we might have to kite them out to do an attack. And then... Come on. You can do it. There we go. That's what we wanted. 1, 2, and 3. Let's go ahead and S this up before we take this guy on. Yeah, I don't think he was going to take the bait on that. He's going to try and go up. I thought he was going to go for Repair or Riposte. I've heard Riposte, Riposte, Riposte. I've heard of several different renditions of it, but... Let your guard down, buddy. I'm going to go ahead and stick with Riposte. So over here, we have a staircase, which will lead us to another NPC. And also an ambush. Come on, I see you over there, buddy. There we go. Hollow warrior armor. That's pretty much useless to us, but I want to talk to this guy first and foremost. Here we have the undead merchant who is already gone hollow, apparently. How are you?
Well now, you seem to have your wits about you, hmm? Then you are a welcome customer. I trade for souls. Everything's for sale.
Crazy man. Let's look at some of his works before we talk to him. We have Repair Powder. Now, unlike in Dark Souls 2 and 3, you cannot repair weapons just by sitting back at a bonfire. You need to have Repair Powder or go to a blacksmith. We'll meet a blacksmith in Upper Undeadburg, also known as the Undead Parish. Throwing knives are always good. Orange Guidance Soapstones will let us write our own messages. It's only 100 souls. We might buy some of that. Because if people rate up your message, you will actually get Estus. Residence Key, we don't need that because we have the Master Key. And the Bottomless Box, I'm not really sure what that is. Any number of items can be deposited into the box. Okay. What's in the box? What's in the box? Scimitar. Let's go ahead and see. Okay, we can't toggle how it's going to change things. Certain weapons that we have. We will buy some arrows later on that we will need, definitely, and more armor. So, we just want to talk to this guy right now and get to know him a
Things are
little
getting
bit.
treacherous in these parts. A horrible goat demon has moved in below. And up above, there's that humongous drake and a bull demon too. If you stick around this place, it might end up being your grave.
So, don't take that comment lightly because he's told you about 2.5 different bosses. One is the Capra Demon, which we will deal with later on in the Undead Burg because we will need his key to go to the depths and onward into Blighttown. 2, he talked about the Taurus Demon, which is our gateway between Undead Burg, where we are now, and Upper Undead Burg, also known as the Undead Parish. And there is the Drake, which is an optional mini-boss if there's certain things that we want to do, which we might want to do because for a lower-level player, we can get a pretty awesome weapon.
Here, I'm not here to chit-chat. We talk business or we talk nothing at all.
Come on, I need you to talk
Here,
about something.
I'm not here to... We talk...
Let's see something.
What a waste of time. Go and...
Oh, hang on. Bollocks.
Oh, I hope you've brought plenty... What a... Go and...
Okay, come on. Let's see if we can get him to talk really
Oh,
quickly.
I hope you've brought...
Let's see if we can...
Here, I'm not here to... We...
Okay, let's see. He wants... There's something I... There we go.
Throw me a bone, will you? You haven't got much time anyway. Right, Julia?
Okay, there we go. Yulia. That's what I wanted to allude to. Yulia quite possibly could be an imaginary character that we can't see, a friend of his, or it could be his weapon, which he does have an Uchi Katana. However, what I want to touch upon is in Dark Souls 3 in Lothric, we have the opportunity to meet a character named Yulia or Yuria, I forget which, of Londor. So it's quite possibly maybe that her soul, if we are talking about the same character, was transferred from the Uchi Katana to a pilgrim at Firelink Shrine. And since you see certain things in Lothric, which is often known as the transitory lands of the Lords of Cinder, including Lordran, you have another part of Lordran in Dark Souls 3 as well as Firelink Shrine. So it is quite possibly that souls are reincarnated into different items. This was never actually stated explicitly by anybody from Software, whether it was Miyazaki or any of the other developers, but it's something I do want to kind of throw out there as my own theory. Are souls constantly regurgitated back and forth? I don't know if we want to be here or not. Let's go ahead and see if we can bottleneck these goons. Get the stab on. I'm not sure entirely what's over here, other than we have 4 hollow, quite possibly more. Don't want to aggro both these goons. There we go. So the Undead Burg, really for all intents and purposes, is kind of like our proving ground outside of the Undead Asylum. We had the tutorial at the Northern Undead Asylum, and now we have the real go-to here at Firelink Shrine and the Undead Burg. Here we go. Throwing 10, throwing... Now here we go. There is where we eventually, I think, was where we jumped. We could jump to. I could be wrong. But I do want to explore these battlements a little bit more. Okay, perfect. So we are back where we popped out into the bergs. We've pretty much done an entire 360. So the last thing I want to do tonight is run over here. Because we have the master key, we can open this door and then collect a wooden shield. Now this wooden shield has a lower defense with us. Hang on, here we go. A lower defense with us compared to our heater, but it also has, if you can tell, a lower endurance requirement, so we have the opportunity to fast roll, but it's something to just think about when you're looking at weapons, armor, and stuff like that. I'm pretty confident right now with the heater shield. We don't really need to do any upgrades just yet until we meet our next character in the next episode. So this is pretty much a good place to call it a session, because we have another bonfire right here. I'll probably do some soul farming off camera just to kind of continue to get my mechanics. But we've covered quite a decent bit of ground so far with both Firelink Shrine and parts of the Undead Burg. Next entry, we will talk a little bit more about the weapons and armor we have received, as well as some more lore on the Undead Burg, and hopefully get to the first boss of the Taurus Demon. But those are just my theories, those are just my findings. I'd love to know your opinions on everything, so please let me know what y'all think in the comments below. If there's something that I've missed lore-wise, please let me know. Yeah, just keep me posted. I read every comment and I try to reply to every single comment. So, with that being said, before I call it a night, if you like the Boogie Night Project and you want to find out more, I do have a Twitter page as well as a public Discord channel, and links to both of those are in the description below, as well as a link to my temporarily down Twitch page, and if you're so inclined, my Patreon account. So otherwise, I hope y'all have a fantastic evening, and I'll catch you on the flip side, alright? Peace.